What was that?
We're filming.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Here we are with the New Orleans, Mississippi Delta Surregional Exploration Group. And we're about to hear a short text on freedom, called Freedom is the Only Word. And then we will be drawing random passages from a book called Lightning Storm Mind, Pre-Ancientist Meditations. And the members of the group will be responding in the spirit of the lightning storm to these passages. And maybe since we're recommencing, maybe we could have like a 1 or 2 sentence reintroduction of people. So we go counterclockwise again.
Okay, so I start. My name is Lala Ashtic, and I'm from Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I'm a visual artist and have been living in New Orleans since 2009.
Hey, I'm Robert L. Krieter. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and I'm a student here in New Orleans since 2013.
I'm Max Cafard, and I emerged from a certain psycho region in the late 80s. I'm not sure what I was doing before that.
I'm Kelley. I am a student of philosophy and permaculture.
I'm Todd Burst, and I'm a historian and a visual poet.
Thank you. This text was something that was written in response to a request from Penelope Rosemont from the Chicago Surrealists in response to a call by the Paris Surrealist group to write text in reaction to a quote from André Breton about freedom being the only word that still exalts him in 1924. And the newspaper Le Monde had an article about surrealism at that time in 2013 when Penelope requested this, in which Le Monde quoted a passage about the spirit of surrealism before and after the Second World War, and said that the spirit of surrealism of that age seems so distant today, dans sa liberté radicale et désespérée. So that's what I'm responding to, this spirit and the radicalism of freedom in a certain sense. And also it's about desperation. Freedom, the only word that still excites and executes. Freedom, the only word that still delights and devastates. Freedom builds wild freedom in freedom's despite. Freedom, word. Freedom, wired. Freedom, weird. Bad freedom drives out the good. Our freedom is inflated. Our freedom corrupted. Our freedom polluted. Our freedom disgraced. Our freedom distorted. Our freedom degraded. Our freedom diluted. Young libertarians for domination, only in the land of the free. I'm so free, I forgot to laugh. Freedom isn't free. It isn't even freedom. The blessings of liberty. Sacrée liberté. Gris-gris on the free. The price of liberty is infernal vigilantism. The fundamental freedom, pumped up paranoia. The only thing we have to fear is fear of fearing, fear of fear itself. Fear of losing what we have. Nothing. The loved and loathed lack. Nothing. And this covers everything. The big green freedom machine runs on emptiness, runs on fear. They hate us for our freedom. They kill us for our freedom. We are die Freien. We die Freien. Freedom fries from hell. Free the free. Slaves of freedom in the free market. Surprise, I own you. Now let's not be aggressive. The principle of non-aggression is of no real interest. This is the age of post-freedomist freedom. This is a free country, at best free range. So let's have wild freedom, free freedom that breaks ego bounds and bonds. Free ourselves, from the great dictator. You think you're your own mama, but auto-gestation has yet to be achieved. Freedom is escape from wild freedom. Welcome to Freedom, Kingdom of Escapism, United States of Amnesia, United States of Anesthesia, Free, Dumb, and 21. Opiates, the religion of the masses. Murky pharma pseudo kills brings you libertarian. Libertarian, registered U.S. Patent Office. The universal panacea. Libertarian, the cure-all for every disease, or lack of disease, or disease of lack. Side effects of libertarian include confusion and confusion, also confusion. Mood swings, mental instability, instrumental rationality, blurred vision, sleep disturbances, restless motions of the eyes, tongue, and other organs, decreased interest in sex, increased interest in sex, slurred speech, clumsiness, hyperactivity, commodity fetishism, tremors, instability, fainting spells, agitation, not political agitation, hostility, hallucinations, hallucination nation, jaundice, cynicism, drowsiness, fatigue, swelling, ego inflation, rashes, nausea, vomiting, loss of breath, crisis of spirit, headaches, depression, impulse to hurt oneself, suicidal thoughts, loss of consciousness, loss of critical consciousness, death, living death. If you experience any of these symptoms, do not despair. Embrace your symptoms. Shop till you drop, and take more libertarian. The world will go away. My fellow Americans, welcome to the land of the free. World capital of incarceration, give me your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. I will crowd them into suffocating sweatshops and squalid, stifling cages. Freedom from intimidating open spaces, freedom from harsh sunlight, freedom from terrifying human conduct until deportation, and freedom from all this freedom. Welcome to the land of the free, where all are in preventive detention. We need a gulag to prove we are still free. Sweet land of liberty, gone sour. Liberty and death get both at one low price. Watch out for my freedom. A shitload of freedom coming through. Step aside, freedom coming through. Don't tread on me. When fighting for freedom means fighting, freedom means nothing and is nothing. A word for nothing left, a lack. We are in a war of freedoms, clash of freedoms, freedom versus wild freedom, nothing versus creative nothingness, Nobo Daddy versus Nobo Dada. Freedom can't scare nobody except Nobo Daddy. Wild freedom terrifies and traumatizes. The free fear wild freedom, wild anything. Welcome to the land of the freaked, the home of the frayed. Fly high, free bird. You got freedom to tweet. Digital lobotomation is mad freedom. Riding high on the starship free enterprise. Bürgerkönig, Mac freedom. Enterprise was born free, but everywhere it is in chains and malls, like you and me. So arise, ye prisoners of infinite wants. Let's have wild freedom. Wild freedom builds freedom in freedom's despair. Unwilled, wild. Time is just a stream in which I goes a fishing. Flow of time, pour us a liberation. privation, poor us, sad nothings, missing everything, a serious oversight. Let's have wild freedom. The phantom of liberty haunts us with a feeling, something momentous about to appear. The millennium, the revolution, the liberation, death, undeath, resurrection, the undying moment, something utterly miraculous, a thing already present, a thing finally to be noticed, a thing to be remarked, a thing to mark us, an incisive incision, initiation into the beyond, always present, the surreality of spirit, the Holy Ghost, the ghostly whole, the glad day when Sur will be sub and sub will be Sur, the radical spirit, completely radiculous. The spirit is a root, radis révolutionnaire, ready for revolution ou pas. Step into it, enter the stream, desperate spirit, desperate spirit, desperate spirit, espoir et désespoir, orage au désesprit, du désesprit à l'esprit, il n'y a que pas. The days, the daisy chain, les dés, the unchaining chain, an objective chance, de désêtre à désêtre, du désespoir à l'espoir, poire de déesses, three goddesses, creative spirits, birth, love, nature, déesse, déesse, desperate spirits, desperate for desperate spirits. Desperate for what? For nothing at all. The nothingless all. The realm of freedom. The free domain. The here and now. Pure lotus land. Beneath our feet. Wild freedom. Liberté. So that's what it's about. And now these people are going to tell us what it's really about. So, stimulus, response. Here's a stimulus. I hope the text wasn't entirely unstimulating. According to our ancestor, wisdom means giving heed to the nature of things. It means paying attention to the naturing nature of things, to their becoming and unbecoming themselves, to their animate and reanimating being. Yes?
Yes. I don't know. Start the flow of consciousness by.
I feel like that quote juxtaposes to nature as something to be controlled, and that this is the other side, as something that flows by itself without humans trying to control it.
Absolutely right. You do realize that when you give the right answer, you have to eat this. It's kind of like a sacrament. It's like a sacrament.
Okay, yeah. I'll
pretend to be it anyway.
Are the right answers?
Okay. Does anybody else? Well, they're not only they're right answers, they're even righter answers.
Oh, go for
And then there's the rightest answer.
But
Well, we don't want to be right.
Who's really the writer, though?
The writer or the red?
No, the writer. The right is
The writer,
The
the
right.
writer,
Right.
and the writeress.
right of the left.
And-
Because
and-
everything is always in becoming, and this narrative might be in becoming as we talk about becoming and the rightest of the right.
That's true. You're right. Okay. Bacon died for your frozen pepperoni. Maybe I should probably throw that back in because we're going to do this elsewhere. Thanks.
Okay.
You don't have to eat.
You don't have to eat.
Bacon died for your frozen pepperoni.
What came into my brain is awareness of where things come from and the nature of things.
Okay. Awareness is probably a good thing. I totally agree. You're right.
I'm also going to stick with mine from before.
Yeah, I feel
Control.
that they go together.
Okay. Anything else?
That quote provokes not much in my mind. I have to
You know what
about
I think?
bacon dying.
There are footnotes in the book.
I
Yeah.
think
So-
we should read them in a row
Oh, okay.
together. What if it's telling a story?
It could be a story.
And
In
have
fact,
a
I think
bit
it
of
should be made into a
That's a
major
good idea.
Hollywood movie.
Exquisite corpse kind of situation.
Okay, there is actually a semi-literal meaning to this. That, Francis Bacon said knowledge is power. He was
Yeah.
at the beginning of the modern revolution, which led, to the technological change of the industry. And he died basically working on how to freeze food.
Yeah. That's right. He was outside trying to freeze something.
He was trying to freeze.
Oh,
He,
okay.
he caught a cold, got pneumonia or something, and
Okay, I
died.
didn't
So
know that.
literally, Bacon did
Did-
die
yeah.
from your
Okay,
frozen
full
pepperoni.
pepperoni.
But I mean, also, it's kind of, you could think of all the animals that die to be bacon, which is kind of like a meat, and pepperoni is, etc. So there are many ways of looking at it, and probably most of them are not worth looking at that way. But who knows? Okay. Democracy can, all of this relates to the fragments of Heraclitus, by the way. Every one of these passages is related to a fragment of Heraclitus. And part of the book, the nature of the book, is that it's about Heraclitus' philosophy as in many ways a West Asian version of a philosophy that you find in Zen in East Asia and in Taoism in East Asia and certain forms of Buddhism in South Asia. And you find it in Southwest Asia in ancient thought, particularly Heraclitus. But there are many other things. But all of these do relate to those fragments. Democracy can only exist amongst beings capable of realizing that this world is the same for all. Democracy is creation out of nothing, but this nothing must be a common nothing.
Commons, I think, is the most important thing we have to realize now, that commons are something that is completely forgotten. And people are not responding to the threat the commons face. And commons is air, but commons is also society. And we are completely threatened. And there is an immersion of an undercommons, something that we don't have to think about as a society, but it's another community that's self-organizing out of sight.
Truly out of sight. That was a great comment.
Out of sight.
Out of sight.
Out of sight.
How are the commons in Minsk? We hope that you guys have commons there because we don't have commons here.
But we're working on it.
We're working on it.
Should we elaborate on commons? Do you think?
A place to gather and be together publicly.
We'll elaborate.
And what do you think commons means too? Feel free to talk amongst yourselves.
It's a tragedy.
Commons are also natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
Internet is the commons.
Right?
Something we just almost lost.
Mhm.
But there's a net to catch it, thankfully.
Yes.
Mhm.
Literally.
Good point.
And
All right. This is a slightly longer one. Lifetime, Ion, is a child at play, moving pieces in a game. Kingship belongs to the child. Our ancestor urges, keep your eye on the ion, not on the clock. We must admit that the tin pan woodsman expressed it well. Why does it play, the great child of the world play, Heraclitus brought into view in the Ion? It plays because it plays, close quote. Sometimes convicted criminals get Eastern religion. Thank God, non-God.
You have to give us your thoughts too. I like you to give the context of like your.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a context.
Tell us what you thought when you wrote that.
Well, okay. I mean, first, there's a desire to learn from the wisdom of Heraclitus, the wisdom of obscurity. And then secondly, there's a quote on the person that I call the tin pan woodsman, who was Heidegger, who was this convicted criminal.
But he did live in the woods and write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he knew much about the woods, but he lived in the woods and wrote.
Correct.
Because he had to.
No, that was his place of solemn peace, right? He would just go into the woods and write.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
a cabin.
Right.
I didn't know that he was a convicted criminal.
Well, he got penalized in any case after
What?
the war for being a Nazi and representing the Nazis, being the rector of the university under the Nazi regime, that sort of thing. He wasn't thrown in prison, but he was penalized. He was given restrictions because of his crimes. I like to exaggerate what happened there. Okay, convicted criminal.
Well,
so,
okay.
Yeah, and
if a Nazi, then yes, I understand now. But that would be why you would label him as a convicted criminal.
Yeah.
Very.
I mean, even if he had not been,
You don't have to.
if the government had not done anything, I would still label him a convicted criminal.
Exactly. So you don't have to say it's an exaggeration.
No, it's an understatement.
Let's not go overboard.
Okay.
Can I say one more thing about that? I feel like in the passage, like order or planning is kind of subversive to play.
Yeah.
Playing.
Yeah.
And it's what a convicted criminal also kind of gets to. Like the plan. This is the truth. Blah blah blah. Forgets play.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about what that passage is really about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about Heidegger, really. Yeah, it's about.
No,
play.
I'm sorry.
And it's about the child.
Yeah.
And of course, in the fragments, Heraclitus says it might be a good thing to kill all the adults and let the children run the city.
Yeah.
And some people say he was anti-democratic. No, he was more democratic. He thought kids should get to decide things. And he did, and of course, people will never read it ironically.
Yeah.
It was like a proposal. Let's
Yeah.
see. I'm going to do a proposal. I'm going to write this up. Kill a. Not really. It's ironic.
Right, but
Okay. Our ancestor taught that all things come into being and pass away through strife. So throw yourself into the maelstrom. Feel free to be compelled.
The maelstrom? I'm sorry.
Feel like
Okay.
suppose.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yes. Don't be sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry. Don't be sore either. Don't be E. Especially don't be E. And what comes after that? Feel free to be compelled. Think contradiction. No, don't. Think contradiction. Well, one person walked out because this was so unbearable.
Outraged. Could you read the beginning of that one again?
Yeah.
Everything comes into being through strife.
Yes. All
So
things
throw
come into
yourself
being and
into
pass
the
away through
maelstrom.
strife. This is Eris. This is the goddess of discord. She's responsible.
very interesting, and even just like a preliminary research on Eris, since we're here in Strife, just basic Wikipedia entrance, and this is something that I'm really interested in, that actually Eris is laid the ground to for the Sleeping Beauty myth.
Really?
Yes. Thetis and Peleus' wedding, she wasn't invited because she's the goddess of strife. And the Olympian gods thought it wouldn't be a good idea to invite her to the wedding. As a result, she got very angry and produced the apple of discord, which was then given to Paris and were to perform the judgment of Paris, pissing off Hera, and therefore making, giving, how do you say it, an opportunity for the attack of Troy.
Wow.
So that's all tied to her. All things are connected.
All right.
Leave out of you.
Okay. Maybe I'll pick a passage about Eris again. This is a big one. I don't know. Oh, should I do this? It's long.
You picked it.
Okay, I guess I'm condemned. Okay, for academic people, our ancestors would be appalled by today's professors. Perhaps they should be called contrafessors of philosophy, who devote much of their contrafessional lives engaged in the effort to convince the youth of Absentia, which is America, that the most crucial of philosophical questions is whether it can be proven that an external world exists, a symptom of the sorry state of supposed internality. Live the questions now is, in a sense, the wisest advice. But in a sense, we have little choice in this matter. We always live one question or another, even if only the question of how we can most effectively avoid facing the question we need most to be asking. The way in which we live our chosen questions determines the nature of our being. Well, that's one of the most non-obscure things in the whole book.
I love that.
I'm glad you like it. Love it, even. Well, you've had experience with professors probably, so you know something about this.
I have.
Okay. They're terrible beings.
They are.
They're demons.
Why would you say that? That the professors are demons? And why would you agree?
Well, they're possessed by demons. The demons tend to take over.
They tend to.
Which
Well,
demon?
the demon of professionalism, the demon of careerism.
Capitalism, forcing you to do
Academia.
Yes.
Well, it is, I think, a very isolated space.
I know.
It's I think one of the spaces that has least contact with reality, and it's great because it's shielded. It's something that produces knowledge. It is the place where knowledge is produced, but through reflection on the outside, and it's great that it's a shielded place.
Knowledge is very refined in academia, where like it has to be the writer. It has to be this one way, and you lose the expansiveness, like in this discussion, where you're allowed to just open up.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be right.
I like what you're talking about, living the questions of today, because I feel like humanity is like constantly about being confounded by its very own evolution, and nobody from the past is gonna have all the answers to the present, even though there's overlapping relatedness that helps, but in other words, as humanity unfolds and continues to evolve, we're always gonna have a never-ending, an insatiable drive for philosophy or to understand what's going on, because everything before us is changing. So, the quest for awareness or to, reckon what's going on will never end. But that has to do with living the questions of now,
Right.
as opposed to, okay, here are 20 of the most top-ass philosophical questions, most of which are silly, and study them and you'll get a degree. That's not the proper approach, I don't think.
In our project, La Terre Institute has this kind of slogan, or word, appamata, which means basically awakening, what you were talking about, and the other half is care. So that the awakening is just not for the sake of just awakening, but an awareness of what there is that you're awake to and what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see what Heraclitus and someone who reflects on Heraclitus might say about that. I don't know. As is so often the case, the legend reveals the truth in its opposition. Our ancestor hated his kind only out of love for his kind, the kind who revere the common, or are capable of such reverence. Out of deep love, he warned them of their growing monstrosity, their demonic nature. For our ancestor, the neighbor monster was rearing its ugly head, but was not ex rerum natura. And the last part could be a little obscure. There's this guy named Slavoj Žižek who keeps harping on how terrible the neighbor is. And the neighbor is terrible, but the neighbor doesn't have to be terrible. One of the things that always struck me as being very strange is that people say, in this world, you have to be afraid of everybody. But my neighbor on this side is wonderful. My neighbor on that side is wonderful. Is this the only place in the world? So okay. So that was the last part. Was in part inspired by Žižek and others who give us this cynical kind of view of the neighbor.
I think a lot of people have this cynical view of the neighbor and the external. I was writing in my journal this morning, all of my neighbors in the house I'm in right now have these security lights, everyone's shining their lights. They're fearful neighbors.
Right.
With fences.
But there is that. Good fences make good neighbors. And there's this. It's terrible to say that, but people like space and separation, and I think that is inherently what's problem with our civilization.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's civilizational, and the idea of the commons should definitely it needs to be more strong in our mind, and we should be more aware of the potential that we have of living together. And
So,
that comes from my communist background.
I drew this as you were talking. Property, as our ancestor foresaw, has meant the slow death of the common and of the community. As communicidal property has expanded, so has the ego, that most intimate of parasitical possessions, mushroomed at the expense of the common. Though this mushrooming ego has certainly grown into the champignon of the world, it remains a champignon inférieur in the gut of reality. By the way, in French, the champignon inférieur are the kind of bacteria in your gut. So,
champignon means the fungus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what that means, in case anybody has doubts. But it was really kind of carrying on your thought that you just expressed.
So it's always, and I'm always thinking, like, how do
May I
you
choose
feel?
one? Or only you allowed?
I'm the only one allowed, but you can choose one. You think I'm cheating?
The game never ends. What? I don't know how you say this word.
What does it look like? Can I look at it? You don't even have to read that word because it's translated. Our ancestor was
Okay. That's a lot in one word. Our ancestor was called the Dark One, the Obscure, because of the light he shed on all things. He was a lightning rod.
think it's important that we all be lightning rods to transfer that light and to bring it out into the world.
Why would he? But he's called the Dark One.
I know, isn't that great?
Maybe it's like the sun you can never look at. It's like the source of all light, but you can't see it because it's.
Well, sometimes you can only shed light on things through obscurity. And he was like the ancestor of dialectic. Like, I'm interested in the two great figures in the history, the beginning of the history of dialectic in written thought. One is Nagarjuna in India, who was a bit later, maybe 2nd century or so. His dates are not clear, 2nd or 3rd century. And in South Asia, and in Southwest Asia, Heraclitus, who presented all these dialectical thoughts in little fragments that we have. So one of the points is not, of course, in Taoist thought, this whole book is partly a reading of Heraclitus with Lao Tzu and Taoism. The two go together. The two interpenetrate, they go together. You can't understand one without the other. Right. And sometimes the light is in the darkness, and the darkness is in the light.
I like the idea of the darkness as this kind of as an idea, as light, as this infinite arena which is absolute and is completely contentless and is this true void. And this truth is there, and it might be also tied to the theory of religion and this idea of a space where there's no time, no light, nothing, when it's just either chaos or just this absolute.
Yeah, there's a lot about chaos in these fragments, and of course, Hun Tun is the ancient Chinese god, if we want to say, of chaos, who was at the beginning. And Zhuangzi tells the story of how chaos was killed. Eris, is related to that. These ideas went across the great continent. So that, chaos in a sense is empty of everything we usually think of as being something, but it's full of everything else.
It's like the darkness is full of all the colors of everything.
Yeah.
I like to think of darkness as like a benevolent force that leads you to the light. Like it's like, or the light and the dark, like you were saying, are interchangeable, but like you're saying, the colors are in the darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the wonderful thing about light is that it can lead you to the darkness.
It can.
So like tomorrow night we're going to be celebrating the night of radiant depth unfolded. And so we're going to have a big bonfire, but we might need a flashlight to get over to where the bonfire is through the darkness.
Through the darkness, yes.
Right. Yeah.
That reminds me, this is something that is more like, while we're talking about the light, the nature of light, it reminds me of a wonderful piece that I just saw. I just came back from Miami, from the Art Basel. And it was a very simple art piece. It was just mounted on the wall, a geometric cube. But then it was lit by a red, blue, and green spotlight, which were hitting it from different angles. So it was, when all the different lights combined, it was a white LED. It was illuminated with white, but as those, as the reflectors were put at different angles, it cast different shadows, and it overlapped. So you had a red, green, and blue, not the shadow, but where the reflectors, different spotlights overlap. But where they combine these very dark and vivid colors, which you would think could never kind of annul each other in that way, provided this bright white light. But when you see them separately, they were red as that book, green as that one, and blue as the other one. Very much darker, but when combined, bright white.
And that's interesting because the white is the void of color. It's like there is no color. You know, the darkness is all colors.
Yeah.
Isn't it the opposite? The white is all colors, and black absorbs all the colors, so it doesn't
Absorbs,
reflect the
yeah.
light.
Black is the absence of light.
Right.
Basically, black is the absence of light.
Mm-hmm.
In color theory, that it doesn't reflect.
Yeah, I think I got something.
Let's see what her
when I
requirement
was
is.
thinking
No,
about it,
it's-
but yeah, it's starting. Okay, it's making sense to me.
Okay. Black is the absence of light.
What?
It has been said, but
No.
Yeah, that's
but who knows? Let's see. We get back to his image more. Some shallow logologists assume that when our ancestor says that as they step into the same rivers, other and still other waters flow upon them, this reflects his view of the Logos, that the structure of the rivers remains the same as the elements change, but the river is as deep as this logology is shallow. So that's a little complicated, but it goes back to the idea of stepping into the same river. And, how are we supposed to think about that? What is it that's never the same?
It's like a skiing contest.
Some people think that there's a structure that remains the same, but everything within it changes.
Yeah.
But this is sort of challenging us to think about how the structures themselves change.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's, I don't know if you want to say anything else about that. It's probably, maybe I shouldn't, I'm not too good at drawing these lately.
Yeah,
so
maybe we should just do that, and then it's going to be a very long video.
we'll each
for
do
the-
one.
Yeah.
You've
This would
done
be
one.
our closers.
Yeah,
Long
yeah.
closer.
So anybody who hasn't done it will do one now.
Always for the first time.
Okay.
Wow, that's awesome. That was good.
How does it feel?
Feels great.
Do it again. Do it again.
Let's hope so.
Read it again.
Always for the first time.
There you go.
Okay, read it again.
Yeah.
Always for the first time.
All right, I guess that covers it pretty well.
Yes.
Body and blood of Christ.
Would you like one?
Please, yes.
Okay.
So I don't have to eat it. Alright. Our obscure ancestor, diagnosed several thousand years before the onset of its acute stages, the late civilizational disease, attention deficit hyperpassivity disorder. He also prescribed the cure, post-traumatic surrealist dialectic.
Okay, that's a little didactic.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear. Is it?
They're all receiving the cure right now.
That's right. Okay, so we already covered this in a certain sense.
Yes.
Okay,
The cure has been administered.
so you're the only person who hasn't drawn one.
Mhm.
So it better be good. It's the last one.
All right.
Best for last.
Yeah, don't disappoint. No, I'm just kidding.
It has something about Minsk in it.
No, it has something. Oh, it has a little bit about the midwife. Our ancestor deserves the title of midwife in the world historical event of bibliobirth. The papyrus scroll migrated from the subtropical delta only a century before, along the way transforming itself from a tool of domination to a domain of imagination.
It's a great conclusion.
That was well said. I like Bill.
So that kind of gives us a job to do.
I hope it's playing.
I
You
think
just
so.
hold it.
I think this is a good surregionalist collage. Maybe we should show them because it's a good image now. I'm approaching this as a visual artist where we can
Right.
make a video collage with
We could each
pieces
hold
of
one?
paper.
Yeah, it's my camera.
You want to hold one up? Or should we pick others for them that we don't even see?
I'm
Yes, one for them.
You wanna-
I'm gonna take some pictures of them.
Yeah, we'll hold up some, and we will not know what these are, but they will.
Yes. We can hold them like this so there's more fit.
Are we going to try to hold them all up at one time?
Sure. Wait, I'm lost.
I'm coming in on top.
Mine's upside. Oh, wait, yours was upside down.
Oh, this is cool.
They're all upside down.
They're all reversed.
They're all
Doesn't matter.
reversed, so it doesn't
matter.
Yeah, they could all stand on their heads.
Oh, you got the upside down disc. Upside down disc.
Can you put
Can
yours?
you make it? Can you make it?
I don't
Come
think
in and
there's
go in the
no
front.
space on
Come
the
in,
screen.
Yes, there
Look
is.
how cool
There you
that
go.
looks.
I'm
Yes.
going down. 1, 2.
Oh, geez, this is.
Oh, there's one.
Ecstatic brain. Thank you, Minsk.
Goodbye, Minsk.
Goodbye.
Enjoy your anti-bourgeois, anti-culture festivities.
So